Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Hello, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And I'm so excited to have our guest on today, Tracey Pontarelli. She has been a branding professional. She turned multiple six figures in a wellness entrepreneur, and her journey has brought her back to attraction marketing, which I can't wait to dive more into what that looks like. She now coaches frustrated moms just like her how to build a profitable online business without sacrificing your priorities by being authentic, deliberate, and magnetic. I love that word. Oh my goodness. Okay, Tracey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is going to be so much fun, Teri.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so bring us up to speed, how you got to this, where you got to be today.
Okay. So we'll start back in the beginning when I did work. So we were talking about this earlier. I live in New York City, and I was working as a brand marketing and public relations professional for an agency here in New York City. I'd done that for quite some time. I was really good at it, and I loved the work. And if you had told me before I had kids that I would have not wanted to do that forever, I would have said, you're crazy. I had my whole life clearly planned out for me. And then I had kids. And I just realized I was working way too much and I was not able to balance it all. And I found myself becoming very unhappy, just feeling very unfulfilled, not feeling like I was doing anything particularly well. And fortunately, I was able to step out of the workforce, but I really struggled with it from a self-identity and a sense of purpose. I had really tied up a lot of my identity into what I did for a living. And so I decided to stay home. And I will say, Teri, that is probably really where my journey on understanding mindset and the stories we tell ourselves, that was probably really the first time in my life that I found myself, really at just at a point where I didn't know what I was doing. And at that point, I read a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And it's a great book. And it really changed my whole mindset. And I got to a place where I just realized that we are who we are at any moment in time, period. We just are who we are. And I just started to really step into that time of my life of really raising the kids, knowing that I would figure it out as I went along. And I think that's been one of the greatest tools that I had. And so from there, I spent some years just volunteering, doing all the things. And then eventually I was able to start to find some windows of time where I felt like I could start to do something for me. And that's when I found my way back into wellness, which is fitness has always been something I've been super passionate about. I was an instructor in my early 20s. And so I found my way back into that. And that was really just wonderful. I was able to work as a personal trainer and exercise instructor, do it around my kids' schedules. And that is when the doors started to open to the next thing. And one of the things I really do coach the people I work with on is keep following the things that light you up, right? That led to becoming a wellness coach. That led me into the online wellness space. And when I started to work in online wellness, that's when I realized all of the skills that I had as a marketer really helped me really succeed. And so, as I look back on my life, all of the pieces, they all led me to exactly where I am right now. And I just had to have the courage to follow the steps.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great point, because I think sometimes as like high achieving women, we want to have it all figured out. We want to have it all like beautifully laid out. And then we say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And this is what we're going to do. And sometimes we get into this rigid mindset of like, and then when we get to that rigidity, it doesn't go the way we hoped or the way that we planned, And so it is that kind of that balance between letting go, surrendering, and being in the flow. And then, that need to control, like manipulate, like it's just this energy. And this one is like more masculine energy. One is more feminine. And it's like this delicate balance that we are constantly being faced with. It's like, okay, what are we choosing? Because it allows us to be very vulnerable when we just release and surrender and be like, okay, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how this is going to work out. And I'm just going to trust that it is. Right.
Right.
It's
really, it's the idea of that surrendering and allowing. And I couldn't agree with you more. When I find myself in push mode, right? When I'm pushing, when I'm a pusher, I can, the energy, listen, if you're a goal-oriented person, that's kind of your default setting, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you can just make stuff happen if you like really dig in. And it's so interesting is when you check your energy, you can tell when you're really driving towards something in a flow state and when you are grinding it out despite everything in your body that's saying, this is not the way you're supposed to be going. Right. Allowing and surrendering for high achievers is really
I mean, like it is way easier said than done. But I think going back to what you were saying earlier is just like finding the joy, right? Like being guided by what lights you up, what fulfills you, what is, in that alignment with you at that moment. And that's going to help contribute too. So what has been the biggest, maybe the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome to get into that place of surrendering and allowing into that flow energy?
So this is when you can do your psychology work on me. I've thought about this question.
I am no longer.
I'm sure, but it's such a valuable question to ask yourself. Like, why am I like this? Right?
Yeah.
Why am I like this? And I think it all stems back to my mom was a single mom. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, and there was always more month at the end of the money. We lived in always looking for how to make ends meet. Robbing Peter to pay Paul was one of her favorite phrases. And that idea, when you grow up in that mindset where, you don't think you're going to have enough, it really does start to formulate how you do things. Right. And I think there was just a part of me, and still my default setting is to always feel like I'm doing enough so that it doesn't go away. And so that is something that's a lifetime of rewiring. Right. And I really do feel like once I realized that that's where it was coming from, then it was easier to see it and continue to let it go, because that's just a story. It has no basis in reality. I have a beautiful, abundant, amazing life. It's not going anywhere. But that is really, I think, finding those stories that we tell ourselves, and then peeling those apart. That's the work.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Like that is the work. And I think that we all have, work to do. And I think, in my experience of just like working with like thousands and thousands of people over the years.
Yeah.
I truly believe this, that those messages, those belief systems, those thought processes, those behaviors, those patterns that we were taught early on, I think that it truly becomes the greatest gift when we do the work. Right. Otherwise, it just becomes dysfunction. But But when we do the work to transform it, and we take the lessons that we've gleaned from there, and then we implement and integrate, it is such a game changer. And this is what I love about personal development and personal like transformation, is just watching this journey and be like, oh my gosh. And oftentimes the thing that we were afraid of the most becomes the thing. And we're like, wait, I remember I had this conversation yesterday. I had lunch with a good friend of mine. We were talking about something, and we were talking about birth charts. I don't know if you know what those are.
Yeah, I know.
In astrology. Okay.
Right.
So for the listeners, in the astrology world, when you do a birth chart, it's like, it shows you like the time of date you were born, and then it kind of draws out and it tells you it just kind of gives you like a blueprint, if you will, of kind of like, your challenges, your strengths, like all this other stuff. And it's just so much information. And it was so funny because like she had told me, and I can't really speak the language of it. I understand it. I think it's super fascinating. But she had said, well, gosh, I have never seen somebody in the 20 years that I've worked with this, that she's like, there's communication. There's like 5 of them in one house, in this house or whatever it is.
Right.
And I said, oh, and then I said, well, because you got the wrong chart, because I'm not communication. Like, I'm not like, you got the wrong chart. You got the chick here that had a learning disability in language. I always joke that language is not my first language because I've had a challenge with it. Anyways, so I was like, you got it wrong. Like, you got the wrong chart here. And so it was really crazy. A year later, like all this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, that chick was right. And so I ended up reaching back out to her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like now that I have all this insight and awareness around this, I'm like, it has come to fruition. And I was like, gosh, that was the thing I wanted to like keep secret and hide, because I was terrified. Even, if someone would have asked me 20 years ago that I'd be public speaking, I'd be like, you're so funny. You're so funny. Right. And I'm like, oh, right. But it's like, it's a thing that we master, right? Like, we become the master of that, which held us back, limited us, held us back for all of the, maybe not necessarily the great reasons, but that's the transformational journey, which is so powerful. And so when we get clear on our purpose and our power, like, it just all starts to fold in place. You're like, oh my gosh, da-da-da.
Right. I love this. And it's that idea that if you really believe that everything is happening for you and not to you, right?
Yeah.
And when you embrace that idea, which is hard to do sometimes because some bad things happen and you're like, that cannot be happening for me. But if you really own, if you own it and say, okay, all of this is here for me to work through so I can become who I'm supposed to become.
Yeah.
Look at it all through that lens.
Yeah.
Everything is happening for you. And I agree. The things that hang us up the most end up becoming our greatest teachers, and often the way that we can serve others in the greatest way. Yeah. And I'm sure you have similar stories. I mean, the things that have happened to me, I've been able to turn around and empathize and share and help someone else because we had that shared experience. So there's just nothing that happens to us that cannot be a teacher, that cannot turn us into the next version of who we're supposed to become.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I love, obviously I like the word magic. You can see my name of the book is called Be the Magic of You, Tools to Transform Your Life. So how do we incorporate this? So, taking this into the marketing world and marketing our business, marketing ourselves. For a lot of folks, we are our brand, we are our business in some capacity. And even if we're a small business owner, we are the visionary of that company. So we are still marketing, our vision and our mission, if you will. So what are some ways in which you help support others becoming, that marketing piece becomes really magnetic. And so it's like, allowing yourself to be yourself, and just like allowing the clients to see, hear, and experience you that resonate with that energy.
Yeah. I love this question. So it goes back to the idea of your personal magic. I love that. I love the idea that your passions, your interests, the things that light you up are not there by accident. They are the things. Those are the things. And here, let me just back up and say, I talk a lot about personal brands. So we're talking about, as entrepreneurs, about personal brands. And I think if everyone can just own the fact that you have a personal brand, whether you want one or not, you have a personal brand, you are giving off vibes, you are giving off a message of who you are, whether it's by default or design is really what is up to you. And so again, owning who you are, what your passions are, how you want to show up, being deliberate, being consistent, being intentional. Those are the things that you want to put into the marketing mix just as much as anything else that you're doing. Really deciding that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And the more authentic you are, the more intentional you are, the more magnetic you're going to be. And then I think, so that's you on one side. And then I think on the other side, which I know is so hard for so many entrepreneurs, is to get really clear on who you're talking to and talk to that person and really think about everything that you're talking about through the lens of, is this serving the other person? So I think sometimes we get a little sloppy, if I'm being really honest, about what we're putting out on social media, particularly on social media. People will just say, decide that they want to rant or they want to complain. And they're not really thinking, does this have a place here? If it does, it does. But does this have a place here in attracting the person on the other side that I know I want to bring to me? And so I think it's really like getting really clear and purposeful. And I think the clearer you get, the easier it becomes.
I agree with you. I agree with you, because then we have a direction. And I was just having this conversation on my Tuesday call, and we were talking about, when we have universe, God, spirit, angels, universal law, like energy, the energy, once we get clear, we have a direction. And I am a big believer in targets versus goals, because targets allow for that expansion. Targets allow for more to come in. And it's like, oh, here it is. Like literally, we went to the grocery store this morning to get something for my daughter for school. And I was setting my intentions, and I do this really fun attention piece every morning. And I was like, I took a picture of it, and I was like, there it is, and it's because we're being very clear on where we're heading. And so once we start to speak life into it, it cannot, it just is simply given to us. It's simply given to us.
It is once you state it, right? We could probably geek out on brains. Your subconscious brain, when you tell yourself what you're looking for, your brain goes to look for it. And I always say this. So one of the things that I find when I work with entrepreneurs on their personal branding is they get really nervous about getting super targeted on their niche, who they're talking to, because they don't want to leave anyone out. And it's so fun that you said that, because I always say to them the same thing. It's the bullseye. It's not saying you're only talking to this person. It's the center of the circle. That you're just giving yourself a target. It's exactly the same. I say the exact same thing. That's like giving you the bullseye in the center. So you have a focus for your attention. Yeah,
exactly. And then you're going to radiate out from that, but let's have a direction of like who this person is, who's your ideal avatar, who's your ideal client that you're seeking out. And once you attract them, here's the thing, they know more people like themselves, right? And it just builds and it builds and it builds, and it's like, hey, who do you know that you can introduce me to, or that you can connect, because like attracts like, right? And so, it's really powerful. I love this conversation. You and I will have to carry this conversation offline too, because I think we could be great power partners in a lot of sense.
I agree.
So so before we wrap up, and I feel like this just went over, went by like so fast, but what's another tip, a trick, a strategy, or something that you can share with the listeners that they can, implement today? Whether that's their brand message, whether that's, in the marketing, or just overall, what's something that they can walk away with today to do that would, again, continue to create their path to impact?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that I'm going to say, and you just talked about it, is doing some work in the morning on your mindset, some mindset work in the morning and checking your energy, because that shows up in everything that you do. So you got to get your energy right before you do anything else. And then really from a marketing perspective, it's sometimes the hardest thing to do, but is to commit to consistency. Commit to being, just commit to the consistency. And oftentimes we let fear and doubt get in our heads when the results aren't showing up yet. And it could be just literally, you just need to do it for a little bit longer. And having that trust that it is happening, that it will unfold in front of you, and just can show up intentionally and consistency every day, that in and of itself will be a total game changer.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes we take that for granted, and it can be the simple things that change everything. Right. And I agree with you, that consistency, because I think sometimes, I was in the car the other day, and I was talking to my daughter, and we were talking about different types of bamboo. And I was like, did you know that? And I don't ask the name, I can't even pronounce. There's a type of bamboo, obviously, that it stays dormant for 5 full years. And then within, once it's ready, then it shoots up 90 feet in 90 days. And I was like, wow, like, this is incredible. And I think sometimes we're on that like 4.5 year, journey, and we're like, it's not happening fast enough. Or another metaphor is like, the 3 feet from gold situation. Right. And I think you're absolutely right that we will give up before it can happen. And I remember when I was really, targeted, to having Jack Canfield write the foreword to my book, it was, it seemed like it happened overnight, but in reality, it was 8 months, 8 months before that happened. And so I just kept, I kept doing my exercises and my routines, and I'm like, okay, it's going to happen. I don't know how, it's just going to happen. Right. And so again, it is that consistency, which is key, to doing anything, I think,
anything,
whether it's your message, your brand, your, whatever it is, and
anything,
anything. Like, if you're going to choose to, donate more weight to the universe, like, it's going to take consistency to do that. So anything that we do takes the consistency and having permission to do that. And I think sometimes I'm just going to share, if there's something that gets in the way of being consistent, what's the story about that? What's the underlying root? What's the the story of like, gosh, is it that is it the impatience? Is it that, gosh, if I really stick this out, then that means XYZ is going to happen. And if XYZ happens, then I'm going to be like scared or fearful, like whatever that story is, because that's where the work is. And so that's the homework for everyone listening, is like looking at what gets in the way of you being consistent. Because
what are the stories? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? It's usually a story that you got to work through, right?
Exactly. Okay. So this is delightful. Thank you so much for being here today. Where can people connect?
The best place for people to connect is on Instagram.
Okay.
And it's Coach Tracey with an EY_P. They can also head to my website, but Instagram is where I'm active. Again, super consistent. I'm there every day. You can find me on there. And I've got a podcast that comes out weekly on magnetic marketing tips. So they can easily grab that from my Instagram bio as well. Super easy.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracey, for being here. And, I'm excited because, again, everyone who's here on this planet right now, they're doing great things, incredible things. I truly believe that we are here to all help, lift as we climb. And I just think that the work that you're doing is fantastic. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.